I didn't plan to find out this way. Honestly, I never even suspected that I would find out. But, as they say, curiosity killed the cat. Or maybe, in my case, it just left me broken. I'm trying to piece together a situation that has slowly unraveled every bit of trust one thought I had built. And it all started in the most unexpected of places. It was a Friday morning, and I was on my usual commute to work, listening to a podcast about the latest trends in tech. I've never been the kind of guy to suspect the worst, but lately, something was gnawing at me, something I couldn't quite explain. Small things, little inconsistencies. It wasn't enough to call out, but it was enough to make me uncomfortable. It was as if a layer of normalcy had been peeled back, exposing something I didn't want to see. She'd always been meticulous with her routine. Mara, my wife, would always send me a quick good morning text before I left for work, without fail. And I'd always respond with a heart emoji, like a silly little ritual. But that morning, there was no text. No good morning. I thought maybe she was busy, or perhaps she'd woken up late. I let it slide. It's a small thing, right? But then the day wore on. And still, no text, no call, nothing. I tried not to let it bother me. I mean, we all have our days, right? But after a few more hours without hearing from her, I began to feel uneasy. It wasn't like her to be unreachable for this long. By the time I got home that evening, she was there, sitting on the couch with a book in her lap, but her attention seemed to be elsewhere. She didn't even notice I had walked in. She was distant, but not in a hostile way, just distant in that subtle, off-putting way that makes your stomach turn. She barely glanced up as I greeted her, which was unusual. Normally, she'd jump up to hug me, or at least give me a smile, but tonight, nothing. Hey, I said, trying to break the silence. Long day? She nodded absently. Yeah, tired. That was all she said before going back to staring at the pages of her book. Did you get my messages? I asked, casually, keeping the tone light, but my voice betrayed me. There was an edge to it that I didn't intend. Messages? She looked up at me with mild confusion, as if the thought hadn't even occurred to her. Oh, I guess I didn't see them. I tried to brush it off. I wasn't trying to start a fight, but everything inside me was screaming that something was wrong. But I didn't want to look desperate, didn't want to come off as some needy guy trying to dig into things. So, I let the night go on, but something inside me wouldn't let it go. The suspicion, the feeling of being on edge, just wouldn't fade. The next morning, I woke up early for work, and as I walked out of the bedroom, I noticed something strange. Her bag, her expensive, black leather handbag, was left carelessly on the kitchen counter. That was odd. She was always careful about where she left it, always making sure it was placed somewhere safe. But today, it was just sitting there, in the open. Something about it didn't sit right with me. I didn't want to look, didn't want to invade her privacy. But there was this pressure building up inside of me, like something was just about to crack. I don't even know why I did it. I'm not the type of person who snoops. But I walked over to her bag and opened it. Inside, everything seemed normal at first. Her wallet, keys, some old receipts. But then, at the very bottom, I found something that made my heart race. It was a small envelope, unopened. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It was just there, tucked away. Something told me to stop, to walk away. But the same curiosity, the same urge to know what was going on, pushed me forward. I took the envelope, opened it, and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. The message inside was brief, almost like a note scribbled in a hurry. Meet me at 8 p.m. I can't wait to see you again. I stared at those words, trying to process them. My hands started to shake as I read them over and over again, trying to make sense of it. The handwriting was familiar, but I couldn't place it. It wasn't hers. I felt a cold sweat break out across my body. Who could it be from? Who was she meeting at 8 p.m.? Why hadn't she mentioned it to me? I dropped the note back into the envelope and shoved it back into her bag, my mind spinning. The whole world felt like it was tilting sideways. Was I really this naive? Had I been living in some false reality where everything was perfect, when in fact, it was crumbling right under my nose? I tried to stay calm, to not jump to conclusions. But I knew something was happening, something I wasn't being told. I had to find out what it was, even if it destroyed me in the process. And just like that, I was pulled into a whirlwind of confusion, deception, and unanswered questions. This was the beginning of the end, and I wasn't prepared for the journey I was about to take. I couldn't shake off the note I had found in Mara's purse. It gnawed at me throughout the day, It was like a slow-burning ember in my chest. I tried to distract myself. Work, emails, random things. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw those words written on that piece of paper. Meet me at 8 p.m. I can't wait to see you again. Who was she meeting? Why hadn't she mentioned it to me? And why was it hidden in her bag? I'd never seen Mara hide anything from me before. She was an open book. At least, that's what I thought. That's how I wanted to believe things were. But the truth kept whispering in my ear, tugging at me, daring me to confront the situation. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I had always prided myself on being rational, not letting suspicion cloud my judgment. I knew this could be some innocent thing, something completely harmless. Yet, the more I thought about it, the more I doubted myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe she had just forgotten to mention it. Or maybe the note was from a friend. But deep down, I knew something didn't add up. By the time 8 p.m. rolled around, I was a nervous wreck. I had to make a decision. Was I going to confront her? Was I going to follow her and see if she really did meet someone? Part of me wanted to stay calm, to trust her. The other part of me, the part that had seen this gnawing feeling growing inside, wanted answers. I couldn't just sit at home anymore, pretending like nothing was wrong. So, I did what any rational person in my situation might do. I decided to follow her. I waited until she was getting ready. She had no idea I was watching. The bathroom door was closed, but I could hear her moving around inside. I'm not proud of what I did next, but the curiosity was too much. I grabbed my coat, quietly slipping out of the house, and made my way to the parking lot. I knew the route she usually took to meet her friends, and I figured that if I followed her from a distance, I could figure out what was going on. I wasn't sure what I expected to find. Was I hoping for some sort of confrontation? Or was I just hoping for a glimpse of the truth? Whatever it was, I needed to see it with my own eyes. I followed her for miles. It wasn't until she turned into a small, secluded part of town that my heart began to pound harder. This was unfamiliar. Mara had never been this way before. She wasn't meeting Isabel tonight. I knew that much for sure. This wasn't the route to her friend's house. I parked a few streets away, staying far enough back to not be noticed, and waited. The minutes felt like hours. I could see her car parked at the entrance of a quiet, upscale building. I couldn't quite make out the name on the door, but there was something about the entire place that felt private. This wasn't the kind of place you casually visited. She got out of her car, adjusting her jacket and checking her phone before walking into the building. She didn't look nervous or unsure. In fact, she looked composed, confident, like she was expecting this moment. I felt the pit in my stomach deepen. Something was definitely going on, and I had no idea what it was. I stayed parked for a while, waiting for something to happen, hoping for some kind of clarity. But after what felt like an eternity, I saw the lights in the building flicker off. She was inside, alone. I knew I couldn't just sit here any longer. I had to go in. I needed to know what was happening. My feet moved before my brain could fully catch up. The anxiety, the uncertainty, it had all built up inside of me, and I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't just let it fester anymore. As I approached the building, I tried to act casual. My mind was racing, though. Every step felt like it was taking me further from the man I used to be and closer to someone I didn't recognize. I reached the door and pushed it open, the dim lights flickering inside. I looked around, but I couldn't see her anywhere. The lobby was empty, just a few chairs lining the walls and a reception desk that was unmanned. Then I heard it, a door opening behind me. I turned around quickly, and there, standing in the doorway, was a man. I didn't know him. He was tall, dressed in a sharp suit, and had a look of confidence about him, an air of someone used to getting what they wanted. But his presence sent a wave of tension through me. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice smooth, like he had rehearsed the line 100 times before. I didn't know how to respond. My mind was spinning. Who was this man? What was he doing here? What was his connection to Mara? But before I could get a word out, I heard footsteps approaching from behind him. I turned, and there she was. Mara. She looked at me with wide eyes, shocked, almost caught in the act. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And then it hit me. She wasn't alone. This man, this stranger, was the one she had been meeting. My stomach churned as the pieces started to fall into place. The note, the secrecy, the hidden rendezvous, it was all leading to this moment. "Darling," she said softly, almost too softly, "I didn't expect you to come here." I stood frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew. What had she been hiding? And why? I wanted answers. But at that moment, I realized I wasn't just asking for the truth. I was begging for it. Because the truth was far worse than I could ever have imagined. The silence between Mara, the stranger, and me was deafening. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me like 1,000 pounds, crushing the air out of my lungs. The words were there, right on the tip of my tongue, but they wouldn't come. What could I even say? Why? Seemed too small for everything I was feeling in that moment. The rage, the confusion, the sheer disbelief. All of it mixed into a storm in my chest. Mara stood there, frozen, her eyes darting between the man and me, trying to decide how to play this, how to explain herself. But there was no way to explain this. I had just walked into the one thing I never thought I'd have to face. The truth, the ugly, raw truth that no amount of denial could cover up. The man in the suit stepped forward slightly, as though to shield Mara from me. The audacity of it took me by surprise. Who the hell did he think he was? I think it's best if we talk outside, he said, his voice calm and too collected for the situation. It was almost as if he was trying to take control of the situation, like he had the upper hand. I was furious. No. I snapped, my voice coming out harsher than I intended. I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm here to talk to her. My eyes locked onto Mara's, pleading for some kind of acknowledgement. Some sign that she wasn't fully lost to this man, to this secret world I had never known existed. But Mara just stood there, silent. She didn't say anything, not even a glance in my direction. Her silence felt like a slap in the face, a confirmation that everything I thought I knew about our relationship, about her, was a lie. The man in the suit raised his hands slightly, as though trying to calm the storm brewing in the room. Look, he said, his voice suddenly soft and almost patronizing. There's no need for a scene. I'm sure we can work this out. Mara is a grown woman. You don't have to make this harder than it needs to be. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Work this out. Make this easier? There was no working this out. There was no making this easier. I had been betrayed in the most fundamental way imaginable, and yet, he was talking to me like I was the one in the wrong. I took a step forward, my hands balled into fists, my knuckles white. You don't get to tell me what to do. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving until I get answers. From her. Mara flinched at my tone, finally looking up at me. Her eyes, once filled with warmth and love, were now filled with guilt. It was a look I never thought I'd see in her eyes. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. She had been playing me this whole time. Every smile, every hug, every "I love you" was a mask, a performance. And I had been the fool in the front row, watching it unfold. She opened her mouth, but the words didn't come. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but they didn't change anything. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I deserved to know. I needed to know what was going on. I'm sorry, Mara finally whispered, her voice barely audible. I never meant for you to find out like this. Her words stung more than anything. She was sorry? That was it. No explanation, no remorse. She had just spent who knows how long hiding this, and all she could muster was an apology? My heart sank even further. The man beside her seemed to take his cue from her, stepping aside slightly, as though giving us space. He didn't need to. He had already claimed ownership of this moment, of her, of everything I thought was mine. I looked at Mara, my gaze fixed on her like a lifeline, like the last shred of something real I could hold on to. Who is he? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but the words carried a weight that felt like it was going to crush me. Her lips trembled, and for a brief moment, I thought she might break down, but then she straightened herself, her back stiffening. His name is Dominic, she said, her voice cold and distant now. He's been a part of my life for a while now. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Dominic. That was the name I hadn't expected. It was the name that shattered everything I thought I knew. I didn't know what to feel anymore. Anger? Hurt? Betrayal? All of it flooded me at once, like a tidal wave crashing against the shore. Mara's eyes locked with mine again, and this time, I saw something in her face that made my blood run cold. Regret, yes, but also a sense of finality. It was as if she had already made up her mind, as if she had already chosen, and I wasn't the one she had chosen. Dominic took a step forward, his presence now looming between us. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. He handed it to me without a word, like some kind of sick gesture of control. "You'll want to see this," he said. I took the paper, my hands trembling as I unfolded it. What I saw on that page made everything around me blur. It was a contract, a signed agreement. My mind raced as I scanned it quickly, trying to understand what I was looking at. The words blurred together for a moment, and then it hit me. It was a legal document. A prenup. Mara had signed it. She had signed it months ago. It wasn't just some random piece of paper. It was a deal, an arrangement. Something that she had been keeping from me for God knows how long. The words on the page felt like daggers, each one twisting deeper into my chest. You knew about this?" I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief, directed at Mara. She nodded, her eyes never leaving mine. "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice soft now, almost pleading. "I never wanted you to find out this way. But enough," I shouted, cutting her off. The room seemed to spin around me, my head a whirlpool of confusion and heartbreak. I didn't want to hear any more of her excuses. I didn't care. I wanted to leave. I needed to leave. I needed to get out of that place, away from them, away from everything that had turned my world upside down. But as I turned to walk away, I heard Dominic's voice again. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low and threatening. "We'll see you soon, whether you like it or not." I didn't look back. I couldn't. I didn't look back as I walked out of that building. I couldn't. Every step I took felt like I was walking further away from everything I had ever known. The life I thought I had with Mara, the trust we built, it was all a facade, and now it was shattered, lying at my feet like broken glass. I needed air. I needed to clear my mind, to make sense of what had just happened. The cold night air hit me like a slap in the face as I stepped out onto the sidewalk. I stood there for a few moments, trying to catch my breath, trying to push away the storm of emotions threatening to consume me. My hands were still shaking from what I had seen. The prenup, the secrecy, the lies. Everything. It felt like the ground beneath me had been ripped away, and I was left floating in a void, unsure of where to land. I walked aimlessly, not really caring where I was going. I needed to process what I had just learned. What did it all mean? How had I not seen it before? How had Mara hidden this from me for so long? The idea of her signing that agreement, her betrayal, it all weighed on me like an anchor, pulling me deeper into a sea of confusion and hurt. I didn't even notice when I ended up in front of my apartment building. The lights were dim, casting long shadows on the pavement. I stood there for a moment, just staring up at the entrance, unsure if I wanted to go back inside, to face the reality of what I had discovered. But then, I remembered, Mara wasn't there anymore. She had already made her choice. She had chosen Dominic, and whatever this was, it wasn't just some mistake or temporary lapse. This was deliberate. This was calculated. I tried to push the thoughts away, but they clung to me like a second skin. I couldn't escape them. I needed to know more. I needed to understand everything, even if it destroyed me. I needed the truth. I walked up to the door of the building and stood in front of the buzzer for a moment, my finger hovering over the button. What was I supposed to do now? Should I go up to our apartment and confront Mara? Or was there something else I had to do first? I wasn't sure, but deep down, I knew I couldn't leave this unresolved. Not now. As I stood there, lost in my thoughts, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I jumped, startled, and pulled it out. The screen lit up with a text message. It was from Mara. "We need to talk. Please don't do anything rash." I stared at the message for a moment, my heart hammering in my chest. She wanted to talk? After everything? After that? I wanted to throw the phone across the street, to shut her out completely. But there was something in me, something I couldn't shake, that wanted to hear her out. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I was hoping for some kind of explanation that would make everything make sense. But I knew deep down that no explanation could fix this. I texted back without thinking. "I don't know what there is to talk about. You've made your choice." A few minutes passed, and then another text came through. "Please, just give me 5 minutes. I swear I'll explain everything." I stared at the message, fighting the urge to respond. But I couldn't. I couldn't give in again. I couldn't go back to her like this, pretending everything was fine when it was clear it never had been. But then, something inside of me shifted. A part of me, the part that still clung to hope, told me to give her that 5 minutes. Maybe, just maybe, I could get the answers I needed. Maybe I could confront her, get the truth from her face to face. I didn't know if I was doing it because I still loved her, or because I needed closure. But whatever it was, I couldn't just walk away without hearing her out. I needed to know everything. I pressed the button for the elevator, and as the doors opened, I took a deep breath. As I ascended to the apartment, I wondered what I was about to walk into. Was she going to try to justify everything? Was she going to beg for forgiveness? I didn't know, but I knew this conversation was going to change everything. The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open. I stepped out into the hallway, my mind racing. I walked down the familiar corridor, each step feeling heavier than the last, until I reached our door. I stood there for a moment, the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I knocked. The door creaked open, and there she was, standing in front of me. Her face was pale, her eyes red from what I assumed were tears. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there, looking at me like she didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her everything at once. Why? How? When? But I held myself back. I couldn't do this with anger. Not yet. Come in, she finally said softly, stepping aside. Her voice was weak, almost fragile. I walked in, the familiar surroundings now feeling foreign. The apartment we once shared, the space that held so many memories, suddenly felt cold and unwelcoming. We stood there in silence for what felt like an eternity, neither of us knowing how to start. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry," she said, her words like daggers. "I never wanted you to find out this way. But it's complicated." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The pain was too much. She took a deep breath and continued. "Dominic, he's been in my life for a long time. Longer than I've been with you." The words hit me like a freight train. Longer than I've been with you. That's what she said. It wasn't just an affair. It was something more. Something far deeper, far darker than I could have imagined. I looked at her, the tears welling up in my eyes. I couldn't stop them. So all of this, our entire life together, was just a lie. She shook her head, her eyes filled with sorrow. "No, it wasn't a lie. It was real. But I was never completely honest with you. I was always holding something back. And I'm so sorry for that." Sorry. That was it. After everything, I stepped back, shaking my head. I didn't want to hear any more. I couldn't. But just as I turned to leave, she said something that stopped me dead in my tracks. "You don't understand. Dominic. He's not just some guy. He's my husband." I froze. My world stopped. I couldn't breathe. The words echoed in my mind, over and over again. "He's my husband." It was like someone had punched me in the gut. Mara's husband? What the hell was she talking about? How could she keep something like that from me? We had been married for years, and she had never once mentioned this man. Never even hinted at the possibility of someone else in her life, let alone another husband. I felt my legs weaken. I leaned against the wall for support, my head spinning. This couldn't be real. It had to be a joke, a twisted game she was playing. But the look in her eyes, the sheer desperation there, told me this wasn't some bad dream. This was reality. I took a step back, my mind racing, trying to piece everything together. You're married to him?" I managed to croak out, my voice barely audible. My throat felt like it was closing up. Mara nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks now. She looked as broken as I felt. "I know it's a lot. But I swear, I never meant for this to happen. I thought I could keep it all separate. I never wanted you to find out." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. How? How could you think you could hide something like that from me? For years, Mara. Years. She wiped her eyes, clearly struggling to keep it together. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it would be easier if I just kept it all in the background. Dominic and it's complicated. We have a history. But when we met, I thought it was over. I thought I was free from him. But it wasn't. He's been in my life the entire time." I felt like the room was spinning. I wanted to yell at her, to demand answers, to throw everything she had said back in her face. But the words wouldn't come. The shock was too overwhelming. This was the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, and she had been hiding a whole other life from me. She had been living a lie, and I had been the fool who couldn't see it. "You don't understand," she said softly, her voice trembling. "When I met you, Dominic wasn't. He wasn't the person he is now. He changed. We both changed. But we couldn't ever fully let go of each other. He's always been in the background. We have unfinished business, and I was trying to balance everything. Until it just fell apart." Her words were starting to make sense in a twisted, horrifying way. But that didn't make it any easier to hear. Unfinished business. I repeated, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. You've been married to him, yet you've been with me this whole time, and you call it unfinished business? Are you even hearing yourself? Mara's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I thought she might collapse. She took a shaky breath. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to explain everything that had happened between us. I couldn't lose you. I couldn't lose what we had. I stared at her, disbelief etched across my face. So you chose him? You chose him over me, and you just expected me to go on pretending everything was normal? I never chose him. Not like that, she whispered. But I couldn't let go of him. I thought I could have both, and I was wrong. I've made so many mistakes, but please, don't think it was easy. Don't think I didn't love you. I do. I always have. The words stung. They weren't enough. They could never be enough. Because love wasn't enough when trust had been shattered into a million pieces. I could see the pain in her eyes, but it wasn't the kind of pain that would heal everything she had broken. It wasn't the kind of pain that would fix me. I needed space. I needed to think, to process. I don't know what to say, I muttered, shaking my head. I turned to leave, but Mara's voice stopped me. Please, she pleaded, her hand reaching out. But I couldn't face her. Not now. Not after everything. Don't go like this. We need to talk more. Please, I'll explain everything. I turned back to her, my face hard. I don't think there's anything left to explain. I walked out of the apartment, the door clicking shut behind me like the final nail in the coffin. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door, trying to come to terms with what had just happened. Everything I had known, everything I thought was real, was a lie. I couldn't trust her anymore. I couldn't trust myself. The night air was cold, biting at my skin, but it did nothing to numb the pain. I felt raw, exposed. Every step I took felt like I was moving through a fog. What was I supposed to do now? How could I pick up the pieces of this life I had built and start over? I needed answers. I needed closure. And I knew where I had to go next to get it. I just didn't know if I was ready for what I would find when I got there. I drove to Dominic's place. I had no idea where he lived, but I was done being passive. I needed to confront him, to hear his side of the story. I needed to understand how far this betrayal went. His apartment was on the other side of town, in a sleek, modern building that screamed wealth and power. I parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the way. Every step felt heavier than the last. My fists were clenched at my sides. I reached his building and buzzed the intercom. Who is it? A cold voice answered. It's me, the guy who's been played for the last few years. Let me in. There was a brief pause before the door clicked open. I stepped inside and headed straight for the elevator. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my mind was a whirlwind of questions. What did Dominic have to say for himself? What was he going to tell me that would make this any clearer? The elevator doors opened to a penthouse suite. The door was already ajar, like he was expecting me. I stepped inside, taking in the lavish interior. It was all sleek lines, glass, and modern art. It was everything I wasn't. And there he was, Dominic, sitting on a leather chair with a glass of whiskey in his hand, a smug expression on his face. Well, he said, his voice smooth and controlled. We finally meet. Dominic sat there, his posture relaxed, almost amused as he took another sip of his drink. The sight of him, so calm, so in control, infuriated me. I wanted to grab him by the collar and shake the answers out of him. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation for everything. Why he'd done this, why Mara had chosen him, why I had been kept in the dark for so long. But instead, I just stood there, staring at him, barely able to contain the rage simmering just beneath the surface. Well, Dominic said, raising an eyebrow as he set his glass down on the sleek coffee table. Aren't you going to ask your questions? I know you've got a million of them. I took a step forward, my jaw clenched tight. What the hell is going on? I spat out, my voice low but sharp. You've been with her this whole time, behind my back, and you think I'm just supposed to walk away from this? You think I'm supposed to accept it? He chuckled, a low, almost mocking sound that made my blood boil. I never asked you to accept anything. This was never about you, man. It was about her. He leaned back in his chair, eyeing me with an almost casual interest, as if I were some insignificant inconvenience. Mara and I have history, something you'll never understand. We're not like you. We never were. I felt my hands ball into fists, but I refused to react. If I gave in to the anger, if I let it show, I'd be giving him the power. I wasn't going to let that happen. History. I said through gritted teeth. So this whole thing with Mara was just some kind of game for you too? You've been playing with her emotions, playing with mine, our lives, and it's all just some game? Dominic's face shifted, just a little. I could see something flash behind his eyes, a glimmer of something more serious. It's not a game, he said, his voice growing slightly colder. But it wasn't ever as simple as you think. You've never been a part of our world, and you wouldn't get it even if I tried to explain. Mara and I, we were different. We were made for each other, in a way you can't possibly understand. I felt a cold chill run down my spine as the implications of his words settled in. So, you've been lying to me this whole time? I demanded. You're telling me everything we've had, everything I thought we had together, was just a joke? Dominic's lips twisted into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. No, not a joke. You were a part of it, sure. But let's be real here. You were never the guy for her. You were just convenient. You gave her what she needed when she needed it. But deep down, she always knew where her heart really was. His words hit me like a hammer, each one harder than the last. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Everything I had believed in, everything I thought was true, had been twisted into something unrecognizable. What do you want from me? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Why are you even telling me all of this? What do you think I'm going to do with this information? Dominic didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned forward, his expression suddenly more serious, the playful smirk gone. I'm telling you because, in the end, you're going to have to decide what you want. You have two options. You can walk away, go back to your life, forget everything that's happened here, and leave Mara and me too, whatever this is. He paused, letting the words sink in. Or you can stay, try to fix whatever it is you think you had with her. But it won't be the same. It'll never be the same. I stared at him, my mind whirling. Was he serious? Was he really giving me some kind of ultimatum? As if I could just choose to forget all of this and pretend like it never happened? As if I could go back to the life I thought I had, with the woman who had betrayed me in ways I couldn't even begin to process? I don't want your damn choices. I spat, my voice shaking with barely contained anger. I want the truth. I want to know why you've been messing with my life, with Mara's life. Why didn't she tell me about you? Why didn't she say anything? What the hell have you two been doing behind my back? Dominic didn't flinch. Instead, he stared at me with a calm, almost pitying look in his eyes. She was scared, man. She didn't know how to deal with it. With us. With everything we've been through. And you? You were too easy. She didn't want to hurt you. Not like this. Something about that hit me hard, the way he said it, as though he believed every word. As if everything had been some tragic love story, and I had just been the unfortunate bystander who didn't understand the depth of what had been happening behind closed doors. She didn't want to hurt me? I repeated, my voice rising with disbelief. And yet, here we are. She's been lying to me for years, and you're telling me it's all because she didn't want to hurt me? Dominic sighed, leaning back in his chair as if he were done with the conversation. Look, I'm not here to make you feel better. I'm not here to fix anything. I'm just telling you the truth, whether you like it or not. You need to wake up, man. You're just a chapter in her story. Nothing more, nothing less. The words were like knives, each one twisting deeper into the already raw wound that had opened inside me. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to break something, anything to escape the suffocating reality of it all. But instead, I stood there, frozen. His words were cutting through me, slicing through my belief in love, in trust, in everything I had thought was real. I couldn't stay here any longer. I couldn't stand to look at him, at the man who had so easily stolen everything from me, without even a second thought. I turned and walked out of the apartment, feeling the weight of his words sink into me. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to get away from him, from this whole damn situation. My mind was racing with 1,000 thoughts, some I wanted to push away, others I couldn't stop thinking about. I wanted to forget everything, to leave it all behind. But I knew that wasn't possible, because I had no idea what to do next. And that terrified me more than anything else. The weight of everything that had happened in the last few days crashed down on me the moment I stepped outside of Dominic's apartment. The cold air hit me like a shock to my system, but it wasn't enough to numb the ache spreading through my chest. I felt like I was suffocating. It was as if I had been drowning in this false version of my life, and now, I had finally come up for air. only to realize that nothing around me was real. My entire world had been a lie. I didn't know where to go, didn't know what I was looking for. All I knew was that I couldn't go back to my apartment. I couldn't face Mara. Not like this. Not with everything I had just learned. She had betrayed me. And worse, she had been hiding something so monumental from me. Something I would have never suspected. Her marriage to Dominic. How long had that been going on? Had it been from the beginning? Was I always just a placeholder in her life? I walked aimlessly through the streets, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. The city seemed distant, as if I were looking at it from underwater, and nothing made sense. I tried to call my best friend, James, but he didn't pick up. I wasn't surprised. He had always been the guy who told me everything would work out, that life had a way of fixing things, no matter how bad they got. But I didn't want to hear any of that right now. What could anyone possibly say that would make this any better? After an hour of walking in circles, I found myself at a small bar. I wasn't sure how I had ended up there, but it was dimly lit, quiet, the kind of place where no one would ask questions. I sat at the bar, ordered a whiskey, and tried to force my brain to stop running through every damn detail of the mess I was in. But I couldn't. Every image, every word, kept cycling through my mind, over and over. Mara's tears, Dominic's smugness, the ring I never even knew existed. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, and no matter how much I tried to wake up, I couldn't. The bartender, a quiet man with a thick accent, set my drink in front of me and nodded before walking away. I downed it in one go, the burn of the alcohol doing little to dull the pain gnawing at my insides. I closed my eyes, resting my head against the cool surface of the bar, and tried to steady my breathing. But nothing helped. There was no escape. Rough night? A voice broke through my haze, and I turned to see a man sitting next to me at the bar. He was about my age, maybe a little older, with dark hair and sharp features. He didn't seem particularly out of place in the dim light, but there was something about him that made me uneasy. "Yeah," I muttered, not really in the mood to talk. I was hoping he'd take the hint and leave me alone, but he didn't. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his eyes narrowing as if he had some kind of secret to share. "Life's a funny thing, you know," he said, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "One minute, you think you've got it all figured out, and the next, it all falls apart." I didn't respond, just took another drink, trying to block out the words. I wasn't in the mood for philosophy. I wasn't in the mood for anything. But the man wasn't done. He kept talking, his words somehow pulling me in despite myself. "You think you know someone, and then you realize you don't know them at all," he continued. "It's happened to me. It happens to everyone. But you can't let it break you. You can't let it destroy everything you've built, because that's exactly what they want." I glanced at him, my curiosity piqued despite myself. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice low, more out of instinct than genuine interest. The man looked at me, his expression shifting to something more serious. "I'm talking about betrayal. The kind of betrayal that shakes you to your core, makes you question everything you thought was real. But you know what? That's not the end. That's just the beginning." I frowned, unsure of where he was going with this. "What do you mean? What beginning?" The man leaned back in his seat, taking a long sip of his drink. "I'm saying you can't let them win. You can't let them walk all over you. You need to get your hands dirty. You need to fight back." His words hung in the air, and for the first time in hours, something inside me clicked. Fight back? What did that even mean? I wasn't sure, but the idea of doing something, of not just lying down and accepting what had happened, felt empowering. Maybe that was what I needed. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was time to take control of the narrative, to stop letting Mara and Dominic dictate my life. "What do you suggest I do?" I asked, my voice more steady now, as I felt the urge to take back some semblance of control over this nightmare. The man smiled, like he knew something I didn't. "Find out what they're really up to. Find out what they're hiding. And when you do, you don't let them get away with it." The suggestion hung in the air, and I could feel the weight of it. The bitterness in my stomach curdled as I thought about it. Could I really do that? Could I really go after the truth, even if it meant tearing apart whatever remnants of my old life I had left? But as I stared at the man, something told me I had no other choice. There was no going back to who I was before. Not after everything. I wasn't the same person anymore. And if this was the way forward, if this was the only way to get answers, then I had to take it. I stood up abruptly, tossing some bills onto the counter. "Thanks." I said, the words bitter in my mouth. The man just nodded, his smile remaining, as if he knew I would take his advice, as if he had seen this all before. I walked out of the bar, the cold night air hitting me like a slap in the face. My head was clearer now, sharper. I knew what I had to do. I had to dig deeper. I had to find out everything Mara and Dominic were hiding, no matter the cost. The days that followed felt like a blur, a whirlwind of frustration, questions, and moments of clarity. I didn't sleep much. I didn't eat much. All I could focus on was the one thing that had consumed me. The truth. The answers. I had to know everything, even if it meant breaking apart everything I thought I knew. Mara, Dominic, the lies, the secrets, it all had to come to light. But as I dug deeper, as I learned more about their past, about the complicated web they had woven, something began to shift inside me. I realized that what they had, what they'd shared, wasn't something I could change. It wasn't something I could fix. And as much as it hurt, I also realized it wasn't mine to fix. It wasn't about me. Not anymore. What mattered now was how I moved forward. What I chose to do with what I knew. I found Mara one evening, after days of avoiding her, just waiting for the right moment. She was sitting on the couch, her eyes red, her face drawn from the weight of the tension that had hung between us for so long. I walked in, and for a moment, we just stood there, neither of us knowing where to start. But I knew I had to start somewhere. Mara, I said, my voice steady, though it shook inside. I've learned a lot these past few days, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't hurt, because it does. But I've also realized something else. I've realized that I can't change the past. I can't change you or what you've been through. Her eyes filled with tears, and she opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand, stopping her. But what I can do, I continued, is choose how I move forward. I'm not going to keep fighting against something I can't control, and I'm not going to let you or anyone else decide my worth. Mara nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. She looked at me as if seeing me for the first time in a long time. I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen. I love you, and I'm so sorry for everything. I know, I said, taking a deep breath. But love isn't always enough. It doesn't always fix things. And sometimes, the hardest part is knowing when to let go. She didn't argue. She just nodded again, as if she understood exactly what I was saying. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation. It wasn't about making her feel guilty or about punishing anyone. It was about closure, about finding peace for myself. I had loved her, and in a way, I always would. But the person I had become, the one who could face the truth without letting it destroy him, wasn't the same person who had stepped into this mess. And that was okay. It took time, a lot of time, but slowly, I started to rebuild. Not the life I had once known, but something new. I focused on myself, my career, my friends, and most importantly, my own happiness. The truth, though painful, had freed me. And with that freedom came the chance to grow, to be better, to live life on my terms. Weeks passed, and while there were still moments of grief, of second-guessing, I realized that this new chapter was something I could embrace. I met new people, explored new hobbies, and even started therapy to help me process everything. And through it all, I found a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. One evening, months later, I ran into Mara in the park. It was the first time we had seen each other since that night. We exchanged awkward smiles, but there was no bitterness, no anger, just understanding. The past was the past, and we had both moved on. I'm glad you're okay, she said softly, her eyes sincere. I'm glad you found your peace. I am too, I replied, offering a smile. I'm actually happy now, and I think you will be too. You just have to find it in yourself. We parted ways that day with no hard feelings, no regrets. Just a quiet acknowledgement that life had taken us on different paths, but that didn't mean the end was the end. It was just a new beginning. As I walked home that evening, the sun setting in front of me, I couldn't help but smile. The world felt brighter. My heart felt lighter. And for the first time in a long time, I truly felt free. I didn't need to fight anymore. I didn't need to hold on to a past that wasn't meant for me. I had my own future ahead, one where I could finally be myself, whole, happy, and free. And that was enough.